Hi, welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis. Back in May of 22, just as we were embarking on our recently completed long 1968 Friends arc, the 1978 teen movie Almost Summer was released on DVD and Blu-ray. This movie, of course, is most interesting to Beach Boy fans because the title song was written by Brian Wilson, Mike Love, and Alan Jardine, and it, along with two other Mike Love compositions, were performed by Celebration with a lead vocal by Mike Love. The DVD release is by Kino Lorber, who usually provide a good value including extras along with the feature. This one is no exception. Apart from the expected trailers, it includes interviews with the director, Martin Davidson, stars Lee Purcell and Tim Matheson, along with costume designer Sandra Davidson, who happens to be Mrs. Martin Davidson. The interviews, along with the film itself, provide some interesting Beach Boy information and raise some interesting questions. I think it's worth digging into this a little bit, so we'll make this a two-parter. In the first part, we'll concentrate mainly on talking about the movie. In the second part, we'll concentrate mainly on talking about the music. However, of course, by the nature of this, there's going to be a lot of overlap there. According to the Martin Davidson interview, Berry Gordy and Rob Cohen, who ran Motown's motion picture division, had approached Universal with the idea of making a teen beach movie set in Southern California. Meanwhile, Davidson and his working partner Steve Tisch wanted to do a sort of teen character study movie set at a senior prom at a New Jersey high school to star Bruno Kirby. Universal was only willing to greenlight one teen movie. Rather than choose, they tasked Davidson with combining the two projects. I'm sure this is why you get the unusual writing credit showing two pairs of writers. Writer-director Martin Davidson had directed 1974's The Lords of Flatbush and was beginning a long career as a film and television director. Among his better-known later credits was 1983's Eddie and the Cruisers. The nominal star of the movie is Bruno Kirby, playing the kind of streetwise juvenile huckster that he'd been specializing in going back at least as far as his recurring role as Herbie Considine on the Room 222 series in the late 60s and early 70s, when he could still realistically pass for a high school student. He was 29 in 1978. Before he sadly passed away in 2006, Bruno Kirby had a great career in TV and film, including notable roles in Good Morning Vietnam, When Harry Met Sally, and City Slickers. Tim Matheson had been acting since the early 60s, including a couple of appearances on Leave It to Beaver in 1962 and 63, and had been the voice of Johnny Quest on the animated Adventures of Johnny Quest from 1964 through 1965. He'd remained a very busy actor during the intervening years, but his career was really taking off right at this point with his role as Eric Stratton in National Lampoon's Animal House, released just shortly before Almost Summer went into wide release. He's remained busy since then with many roles on TV and in film, including another coincidental brush up against a Beach Boys soundtrack song in 1984's Up the Creek. Tim Matheson was 31 in 1978. Lee Purcell had been working in TV and film since the late 60s. She'd continued to have a long career in film and on TV, notably appearing in 1983's Valley Girl. Like Tim Matheson, she was 31 in 1978. Dee Dee Conn was on a roll professionally, having starred in You Light Up My Life in late 77 and being featured as Frenchie in the summer's big blockbuster Grease. She earns a little box around her name on the movie poster and on the back of the soundtrack album. For the movie, they gave her braces to make her character look nerdy, and also, I'm sure, to help make her look a little less than the 27 years old that she apparently was at the time. Thomas Carter was a relatively young member of the cast, being only 25 in 1978. He would soon embark on a long and busy career as a television director. John Friedrich was 20 at the time, much closer to the age he was playing than most of the rest of the cast. This might be why he seems a little out of place here. It's almost as if a real high school student had turned up among the sweat hogs on Welcome Back, Kotter. He'd also appeared in Thank God It's Friday in 1978 and would be in the hit miniseries The Thornbirds in 1983. After a busy time in the late 70s and early 80s, he seems to have left acting in the mid-80s. As a footnote for Beach Boy fans, the featured cast also includes Karen Lamb in a minor role. She was twice married to Dennis Wilson around this time, from 1976 to 1977, and again from 1978 to 1980. She portrays Lee Purcell's friend Felicia, that's her on the right. The film opens with a voiceover from KHJ disc jockey Machine Gun Kelly announcing that it is in fact almost summer, with only 2 more weeks to go until summer vacation, and we cut to scenes on a California beach. We see a massive and I'm sure very expensive banner announcing Pacific High's election kickoff. Apparently, there are no campaign spending limits for the school election and money is no object. There are Christine Alexander Frisbees. A Grant Michelson for Student Body President banner is trailed behind a plane. There are seemingly endless professionally printed posters for all the candidates. Later on, campaign managers buy new clothes for their candidate and take him to a hairstylist. Eventually, Bruno Kirby's character will hire 4 actors to impersonate police officers as a publicity stunt. I don't know what it would cost to hire 4 actors, particularly 4 actors willing to commit a number of crimes the way these are, but it must have been considerable. I think a lot of U.S. Senate races don't have the budget that Pacific High's student body president election has. They do make some attempt to explain why everybody is so heavily invested in the election, particularly as a lot of them are seniors and graduating in 2 weeks. For one thing, it's apparently an event that everybody places huge bets on. Bruno Kirby's character, Bobby DeVito, has bet over $2,000 on the outcome of the election, giving him some motivation. In any case, everybody seems highly invested to the exclusion of almost everything else in who becomes student body president. The film opens with kids partying and, of course, campaigning on the beach. During these scenes, we get the opening credits and Almost Summer plays on the soundtrack. The film versions of all the celebration songs are different from the versions on the soundtrack. I'm not sure if they're complete re-recordings, but at the very least, they're very differently mixed and edited. The version of Almost Summer has different verses. The first verse is pretty much the same, except that in the film, Susie wants to be a movie director. On the record, Susie wants to be a lady director. So does Susie want to direct movies or ladies? We may never know. The second verse is completely different. In the film, the verse is, Alan wants to be a football player. Brian wants to start a group. Carl's going to be the guitar player, and Dennis wants a Little Deuce Coupe. Little Deuce Coupe. Apart from the Little Deuce Coupe reference, these lines about the Beach Boys are completely rewritten on the record. Unlike the record, the film version contains a third verse talking about the student body election. Christine and Bobby, you know they were lovers, and then they went their separate ways. It wound up when they ran for student body president, they both something on election day. And if anybody can figure out what the last line of that verse in the film is, I would appreciate it. And I'm thinking particularly of Willie Minix, who's come through a couple of times already when there's a lyric I couldn't understand. Willie, do you know what that is, or certainly anybody else out there? As the opening credits continue to roll, Day on the Beach dissolves to Night on the Beach, and the music segues to an alternate version of Celebration's Sad, Sad Summer, also sung by Mike Love. I was really surprised to hear this used during the opening titles. To me, it seems a complete waste of Sad, Sad Summer, which I'd expected would have been saved to use in an emotional scene later in the film. 6 minutes in, and we've heard 2 of the 3 Mike Love numbers, and reaching the end of the opening credits, we leave the beach never to return. Though he says nothing at all in his interviews to indicate that this is true, when Martin Davidson's director's credit comes up on the screen, it's easy to get the feeling he's saying, "There's your beach movie. Now let's get on with something closer to the movie I want to make." As our story opens, Bruno Kirby's Bobby learns that the student body presidential candidate he's managing, Grant Michelson, has been suspended from school due to a rival candidate, Christine Alexander, Bobby's ex-girlfriend, obtaining a forged absence excuse that Bobby created. If Christine wins, Bobby will lose his bet, so he must find another candidate. Gambling must be working out well for Bobby, who drives a 1959 Corvette C1 convertible. In the novelization of the film, which we'll talk more about later, we learned that the Corvette cost him $3,650 and that he worked summer jobs to save up the $800 down payment. That's still, I think, a pretty good deal on that car, even in 1978. There's a short reprise of Almost Summer played during the establishing shots of students arriving at school. The third Mike Love vocal, Cruising, is, not surprisingly, used in a sequence early in the film that shows scads of cars and bikes cruising on Van Nuys Boulevard, recalling a similar, though much more extensive and much better sequence from American Graffiti. As a sign of the times, the scene includes a literal flash of nudity from an extra to get a rating that will make teenagers want to see the movie, yet be completely irrelevant when it's edited out for TV broadcasts. Also, like American Graffiti, there's a drive-in restaurant where Didi Khan's character works, which is never seen or alluded to again. We're now 19 minutes into the movie and we've heard all 3 Mike Love vocals. Once again, this is complete speculation, but it feels like somebody required Martin Davidson to have an American Graffiti style cruising sequence, and like the beach sequences, he just wanted to dispatch with it early in the film. Soon, Bobby has found his new candidate in the unknown Daryl Fitzgerald, played by John Friedrich, who Bobby begins grooming for success. At the school assembly, Christine Alexander gives a truly bizarre speech. Against a seemingly random background montage of historic photos, she tells the story of a friend who appeared happy and well-adjusted in high school until she was found dead in the girls' bathroom from an overdose of pills. She closes with the guarantee that, if elected, none of them will ever find their best friend dead on the bathroom floor, which I would think is a pretty safe bet because there's no mention of pills or dead friends or anything remotely that dark anywhere else in this movie. Dark Horse candidate Daryl promises, if elected, this school will become our school. Once again, it seems like a pretty safe bet. I don't know how much more this could be the students' school. There are virtually no teachers or staff. We very, very briefly see 3 teachers represented as smug, stupid, or out of touch. The school's office is completely staffed by students, not just any students, but members of the main and featured cast. They even have their own offices. The students run all school assemblies without any of the teachers or staff even bothering to show up. They wander in and out of classrooms at leisure. Later on, when cops arrive at the school, all the kids leave their classes to investigate and intervene without a single teacher or staff member in sight. Considering that most of the cast is around 30, they probably didn't need adult supervision. And nobody's parents are ever home either. There's no sign or mention of a parent anywhere in the movie. I suppose this approach was probably appealing to the teenage audience, but it strikes me now as very weird, particularly for a movie that, at least at certain points, seems to be attempting to be a realistic teenage drama. Anyway, 30 minutes in, there's a scene at the mall with the backing track that became She's Got Rhythm on the Beach Boys' MIU album. On the soundtrack, it's called Lookin' Good. Meanwhile, Tim Matheson's character, Kevin, Christine's new boyfriend, tries out for and fails to get a football scholarship. Shattered by the experience, he turns up at Christine's house. We're now about 37 minutes in. Before Kevin arrives, Christine and 2 friends, including Karen Lamb as Felicia, are hanging out. An unseen radio is playing a very different early version of the Lie Lady portion of the Beach Boys' then unreleased Lady Linda. Lady Linda is listed kind of vaguely in the end credits as music by Al Jardine and Ron Altbach. And, of course, it doesn't appear on the soundtrack album. Apparently, running for student body president involves a talent segment in which Christine does a kind of suggestive dance set in a seedy bar. The crowd approves. Daryl topples a long line of dominoes, which, for some reason, the crowd goes wild for. This struck me as a stupid sequence, and I was prepared to make fun of it. But my wife, who grew up in the San Fernando Valley, in the same general area where this movie is set, tells me that talent shows were indeed a part of school elections in those days, and she recalled a candidate doing a much more outrageous dance campaigning for president of the 9th grade. So rather than make fun of it, I have to congratulate the filmmakers on their accurate portrayal of Valley life in the 70s. Who knew? Anyway, Daryl and Bobby celebrate their success with the dominoes at some swanky-looking location that's never really explained. A short time later, 4 cops arrive at the school to shake down a student for having weed in his locker. Fortunately, Bobby has had Daryl study search and seizure law. Daryl admonishes the cops for opening the locker without a warrant, and they relent, making Daryl a hero of the high school. Election day arrives, and when the ballots are counted, Daryl wins. As we soon discover, those cops that Daryl confronted at the school weren't real cops, but instead were actors hired by the scheming Bobby. Daryl discovers the deception and, feeling he won under false pretenses, comes clean and announces he cannot accept the position of student body president. He runs from the auditorium. After a shocked silence, the entire school begins chanting, "We want Daryl!" That evening, Dee Dee Kahn arrives at Daryl's house to go with him to the senior prom. Her braces have been removed and the awkward, ugly duckling has become a beautiful swan. Daryl arrives at the senior prom to universal acclaim as the new student body president. Bobby's malfeasance is forgotten. Everybody finds their true love, including Tim Matheson's character with a set of twins, and all is well, except probably for poor dumb Grant Michelson, who is apparently still kicked out of school thanks to our heroes, Bobby and Christine. Tim Matheson spikes the punch. Fresh and high energy perform. We'll talk more about them next time. And we roll credits. It's a fun movie, and though most of the cast is a little old to pass for high school students, they're all solid, talented, and likable. As often happens, this movie seems to have been designed by committee. As discussed, it was distilled from two separate projects, and though Davidson and the others working on the film, I'm sure, did a massive job trying to make it cohesive, I'm not entirely sure that they were all pulling in the same direction. Inevitably, the tone is uneven. It's a beach party movie, then it's a present-day American graffiti, sometimes it's a light romance, sometimes it's a dramatic character study, then sometimes it's Watergate in high school. Sometimes Bruno Kirby's character is a charming prankster, other times he's an amoral creep. We go from the hilarious hijinks of a stereotypical nerd with glasses getting hit in the face with some convenient beach pies by some presumed cool guys to dramatic emotive scenes of dashed dreams and broken relationships. And also whatever that speech about the teenage girl overdosing on pills was supposed to be. It's a real tribute to the filmmakers and the cast that the movie comes together as well as it does. Almost Summer was released the year I graduated from high school, and thinking back, I know I had friends who would have really enjoyed the high school only cooler elements of the film. I can easily imagine them telling me, "Man, have you seen Almost Summer, man? It's great!" I picked up this paperback novel based on the film, and while I admit I haven't read the whole thing, it is clearly different from most film novelizations. For one thing, it's narrated in first person from Bobby's point of view, and here he's a streetwise New Yorker recently arrived in Los Angeles, matching wits with the sharp, stylish Christine. The election is still the main event, but there's a New York Bobby versus LA Christine element that doesn't really exist in the movie. I wonder if it was put together from Martin Davidson's notes or an early draft of the screenplay before all the other elements were brought in. Before we close out part one, let's take a closer look at those opening credits. The Almost Summer song gets its own composing credit in the opening titles, which is a little unusual and shows how important the song was to the movie. This is followed by a very unusual credit showing musical score by Charles Lloyd and Ron Altbach, vocals by Mike Love, and performed not by Celebration, but by Toranga. I'm assuming it's an early name for Celebration. There's no such word. I thought maybe it was an anagram of member names, but I can't work that out. A Google search turned up nothing. If there's anybody out there that knows anything about Toranga, please pass it along. Next time we'll continue. There's obviously a lot more to talk about, primarily the soundtrack album and the music in the film. We'll get to that next time. Hope you enjoyed this first part. Looking forward to next time. Looking forward also to your comments. Please hit like and subscribe if you don't mind. I always appreciate that, and we'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.